Much, Ms. Sharma, for addressing our wonderful audience. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen. So the very first keynote address by today is going to be by Mr. Raman Aggarwal, Director, FIDC, Paisalo Digital. And to welcome him and to present a bouquet, requesting our organizing team to please join us on stage. Please, everyone, put your hands together. Let's have a massive amount of energy in the morning. Come on, we are starting today's event. Everybody. A very warm welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us today. What bright smiles we all can witness on stage. Please join us.
Namaskar and good morning, friends. Welcome you all to this nice, slightly chillier Delhi winter morning, although not that chilly now. I thank at the outset B2B Infomedia for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Now that having spent almost 32 years in the NBFC space and going by my gray hair, I may sound obsolete, but let me try and make things more relevant, since the audience is more the techie guys, as we call. So in my journey over the years in the NBFC space, few things have stood out very strongly. First, as I have always believed that come what may, NBFCs are the Iron Man of financial services sector. Because the kind of turmoils, the upheavals we've seen, the challenges we've seen, have been humongous. I mean, for the new generation, I'm sure obviously COVID was a blank swan event, but let me tell you that we've seen equally challenging times in the history also. Why I say this is because today, the fintech industry, I believe, is the new avatar of NBFCs. And that is where the real challenges are also arising. So while as the economy grows and as India marches towards not only becoming an Atmanirbhar, the real goal set out by the Honorable Prime Minister, but also achieve the $5 trillion economy mark, obviously one thing is again standing out very clear, that come what may, the contribution of the NBFC industry in what we call typically funding the unfunded, funding the unbanked or the underbanked segment of the society, something which has not only stood the test of time, but has gained recognition right from the bottom to the top. When I say bottom to the top, not only the society, the individuals or you and me, but even the policymakers, the regulators, and even apex world bodies like World Bank and IMF. My association with World Bank saw the genesis, the reason was during the COVID times when the World Bank wanted to fund Government of India for MSME development. One of the three pillars they identified for MSME development was funding by NBFCs. So that's how they roped me in. So this is something which goes to the credit of the NBFC sector undoubtedly. Now, as we see today as the Indian economy marches, there is a huge demand for credit. And that's why we are seeing that all the financial services players, be it banks, NBFCs, small finance banks, regional rural banks, or the cooperative banks, all of them are showing a very robust performance. Not only it's the top line, but even the asset quality and the bottom line is showing a healthy growth. And in some cases, a very, very steep growth. Now this, I am pointing out specifically because that is where there needs to be some caution. As I said in the beginning, go by my gray hair, and I may sound a bit obsolete here, but that is what experience has taught us. Wrongdoings so when I say wrongdoings does not mean somebody has intentionally done it. It could be unintentional also. Wrongdoings or unacceptable things happen during the good times. They never happen during bad times. Because when the going is good, we tend to get flown with the system and tend to have a slightly lax attitude, or if I can even use the word, ignore the so-called ethics or the regulations evolving. Why I'm saying this is something what exactly the regulator RBI has been saying over the past few months now. Because of the new age digital lending players like you guys, there was a sudden spurt in the growth of unsecured personal loan or consumer loan market. Not that it is wrong, and I have never said that it is wrong or it is not desired. However, there is a word of caution here, that are we building too much risk in the system? So there was a word of caution by way of verbally. I remember we met the Governor Shaktikanta Das last year and somewhere in July. And that time also he had sounded us. That is just a piece of advice that you guys need to take care. That's it. And then it ultimately manifested itself in what we saw, a recent circular about which I will talk about. But it is a very interesting narrative. I'm sure some of you would have already heard about this very famous legend story which goes that there was a family in US who were, as a family tradition, used to always have ice cream after dinner. And so what they would vote, what ice cream to have. So one day the head of the family, this guy bought a new Ford car. They came back home, so they said, okay, as a tradition, so everybody voted, let's go for vanilla flavor. So this guy went up to the store, bought vanilla ice cream, came back, and when he tried to start the car didn't start. He tried, the car didn't start. He said, kuch chota mota issue hoga. So finally he reached home. Next day they voted for a strawberry flavor. He went to the store, bought strawberry. He came back, the car started. Next day they voted for chocolate flavor. He bought the chocolate flavor, came back, the car started. Fourth day, they again said, okay, let's again have vanilla today. So when he bought vanilla, came back to the parking, tried starting the car didn't start. Oh man, is my car allergic to vanilla flavor? That was his first question. Now, howsoever stupid it may sound, he wrote to the company that this is the problem I'm facing, I don't know. Is my car really allergic to vanilla flavor? Now imagine somebody receiving this kind of a complaint, and first of all, somebody trying to make a complaint like this. The first instance, the reaction would be, pagal hai. But he said, Swens, I have spent so much money, why not? And imagine you, the other side of the story, somebody looking after customer complaints, would tend to generally ignore, again, some crazy guy putting in a request. But no, they took it seriously. They sent a technician. This guy went up with him, and he really did this whole exercise with him for the next a week or so, and they figured out. Nothing to do with vanilla, nothing to do with ice cream at all. What it mattered was the time lag between turning the ignition off and reigniting. Because if you know, today that's a common marketing tool, that all those items which are in greater demand, if you go to a store, are generally kept nearer to the entrance. And the ones which are less in demand are kept at the back of the store. So some things like bread, eggs, butter, vanilla ice cream will be, when you enter the store, will be lying somewhere around, closer to the entrance. So vanilla was right next to the entrance door, whereas all other ice cream flavors were kept right at the back. So it was the time lag between turning the ignition off and on. There was some technical issue which was sorted out. Why did I narrate this story? That please don't ignore any issues, howsoever small it may be. And that is exactly what Reserve Bank has done today. So, if you are aware, there was a circular issued by RBI on 16th November, where they've said that with this rapid increase in unsecured personal loan market, we are going to increase the risk weight. So risk weight meaning now the cost of doing this kind of business will go up, additional capital requirement will be required. And added to it, they also increase the risk weight on all bank lending to NBFCs. So this is where we need to be cautious, ensure that we may be unintentionally building risks in the system. Certain checks and balances, of course, there is enough technology. That's one side. Now, quickly, let me also talk about the whole, we know the whole talk, I should use the word, is the right word, of this digital lending. What my experience has shown is 2-3 things, I think, which you guys as fintechs need to do. First and foremost, I think the whole idea or the whole term fintechs has been highly confusing. Because whatever little I know, fintechs is finance plus technology put together. It's technology driving finance. Now, there are two aspects of it, or two avatars of this. On one side are those fintech guys who are providing tools or various products which can be used by the financial services players for their operations, any operation, any part of the operations. And the other part is the ones who are themselves directly into the lending business. So they are the fintech lenders. So I think the first point of confusion arises here. Because when you use a generic term like fintech, everybody gets painted by the same brush. So first we need to segregate I'm not using the loan service providers, but the genuine service providers who are giving services or products to the financial services industry. And the other hand, the ones who are actually into lending. Now the concern is all totally focused on the ones who are into lending. Because there you are directly or indirectly dealing with public money. It may not be you borrowing directly from public, but if you have taken money from an NBFC or a bank, obviously that's public money. Now, split further into this, there are different players. One are the loan as service providers, or what we call as the LSPs, who have tied up with banks and NBFCs. And the ultimate loans are being booked in the books of the banks or the NBFC. And the second one is the one who are themselves registered with the RBIS, NBFC. That means lending on your own books. Now it's again not the ones who are lending into their own books, which are of much regulatory concern, because those are anyway under the RBI regulation, and RBI is doing all that supervisory mechanism day by day. It's this element of the loan service providers who are not registered with RBI. So that means you do not fall under the category of what RBI uses the term as REs, or the regulated entities. You are not a regulated entity by RBI. You are dealing with a regulated entity. So what the concerns are, obviously, because of, what happened. There were a lot of unscrupulous things. There were a lot of loan apps, and some of them had around. So why are these concerns arising? So let me just quickly try to explain the macro view. Put yourselves in the shoes of the regulator or the policymakers. There is someone in the market whom I don't know who he or she is. What is his or her origin? What is his or her character? First of all, is it a company? Is it a firm? Is it just an individual or a bunch of individuals doing it? I don't know. Number two, is the business activity, lending activity, being done, quote unquote, ethically? There were concerns raised, few concerns. Number three, what is the quantum? What is the size? Is there going to be some kind of a systemic risk developing? So put yourself in the shoes of the regulator, and you will get the answers. So what RBI did was, as a first step, when they came out with the set of digital lending guidelines, what was the basics which they said? Number one, they said all money transaction flow will only be done across regulated entities. That means the fund flow will happen from the bank account of a bank or an NBFC which is regulated with RBI directly into the borrower's account. So whosoever is in between, the so-called LSPs or whatever you may call, you cannot appropriate that money. You can only be a facilitator. So that's the first thing they said. Number two, in order to ensure that the conduct of these business activities is done in the right manner, RBI said, since I have no control on the LSPs, but since those LSPs are doing work for regulated entities, so let me put the onus on the REs. So these guidelines said that the entire behavior or the ethics of these entities will henceforth be the responsibility of the concerned bank or the NBFC. So if you are dealing with, say, an SBI or with a Tata Capital, your behavior, your ethics will be a responsibility of that particular SBI or Tata Capital, because they are under direct control of RBI. So that's where the things stand today. But if you look at what the RBI governor said in the last monetary policy just few days back, something else which RBI is now trying to gauge. They have talked about, number one, a repository of all fintechs, and also an aggregator of all loan products, aggregation of loan products, and a repository of fintechs. So what is RBI trying to do? It is now trying to gauge the volume, the quantum of the market, as to how many fintech lenders are there. Once there is a repository available, so that is kind of, you may call it a white paper, somebody calls it a white list, or whatever you may call. But all that RBI is doing is, now there is going to be a repository. So all you guys who are working with the bank or an NBFCs will henceforth be part of that repository. It may not you be reporting, but maybe the concerned bank or the NBFC will be asked to do so. So RBI knows, okay, here is a fintech player which is working for this NBFC, perfectly fine. So the idea again is to check the undesirable elements. Similarly, the aggregation of loan products, the various products being offered in the market. So as a policymaker, as a regulator, the real concern is that whatever is being done should be done ethically, should be done under the framework of law. So while I know some of the young bright minds sitting here tend to may find it, this is something restrictive, or this is something very orthodox, but in the larger gamut of things, it's in our own interest. Because if you're doing business generally, I'm sure you do not want unethical elements to creep in and play a spoil sport. Because then everybody gets painted with the same brush. Asked Mr. Raman sitting here, NBFC sector has suffered a lot because of this. Because of the wrongdoings of 1, 2, 3, or 4 players, the entire sector were tarnished as bad. I have even seen, I remember many years ago, one fine morning I woke up, and when I picked up Times of India, headlines on the front page said, "No more goons by NBFCs." So imagine the sector being termed as a goon. We have seen those days. And it was again because of the wrongdoings, the unethical practices being followed by 2, 3, 4 players. So I'm sorry for trying to sound cautious here, but it is important because before anything really, major happens, or not only by way of some event in the market, but maybe a regulatory turmoil happening, a sudden churning of regulation. Let us put our house in order from day one. So I think I've said it. I think I would always recommend that, the best way to do it is that all you guys who are currently not registered, that means who are not an NBFC or not this thing, but are working with some regulated entities as LSPs or whatever shape, why don't you guys get together, yourself create some kind of a database. You guys are all, masters in technology. And make that thing available, if not publicly, but at least to the policymakers. That itself will give a lot of comfort. It will give a lot of world of good for you guys. And you may not feel the reheat or the wrath of the regulator coming down heavily on you one day. So I think basic things if we could do, because that is for sure the kind of work which you guys are doing is phenomenal, undoubtedly. Because technology has been the greatest enabler to reach out to the last mile and to reach out to that bottom of the pyramid. And we are fortunate to live in an era where we are seeing the technology having percolated deep down even into the villages. Who would have thought that somebody in rural India using QR codes or flashy payment systems? So technology has gone down, and you guys are using it to the extreme, and the world is watching us today. So let us just put our house in together and march ahead, because let me tell you, the future is extremely bright for. There is going to be a huge scope, humongous, because the government of the day is totally focused. You are seeing the kind of capex expenditure being done in the infrastructure sector. The impetus being given to the development of MSMEs in the country, and the real focus being on developing entrepreneurs in the country. And when you do that, all entrepreneurs need money, they need credit, and that is where we guys pitch in. So I think let's just put our house in order and everything will be good and fine. Thank you.